I've often wondered when the imbalance began. The moment my parents decided my sister deserved everything, and I deserved nothing. Maybe it was the day she was born, wailing loud and beautiful, while I stood by the crib, 3 years old and already fading into the background. Or maybe it was the day my father said half. Jokingly, Clara will be the sensible one, Elena will be the star. Elena was always the star. She had this effortless way of shining, bright, loud, and blinding. Teachers loved her, neighbors adored her. My parents worshipped her. They'd show up at her school events with bouquets, cameras flashing, and tears in their eyes. For me, there were polite smiles and quick nods, the kind you give to the child you're obligated to acknowledge. I didn't mind, not at first. I thought that's just how love worked, louder for some, quieter for others. I convinced myself that maybe if I studied harder, if I brought home perfect grades, they'd see me too. So I did. I studied until my hands cramped and my eyes burned. Every A was a silent plea for attention. But praise never came. When college acceptance letters arrived, I still remember how the world tilted. Elena had gotten into her dream university, the same one as me. She screamed with joy, waving the letter in my face, while Mom clapped her hands and Dad popped open a bottle of cheap champagne. Then I showed them my letter, the same college, the same dream. Their smiles faltered. "That's great, Clara," Mom said, but her tone was distracted. "We'll have to think about the finances." I remember Elena twirling in the living room, already talking about dorms and clothes. My father laughed and said, "Don't worry about the cost, Princess. We'll take care of it." I waited for him to turn to me and say the same. He never did. A week later, I overheard them talking in the kitchen. I hadn't meant to listen. I was just passing by. "She deserves it," Dad said. "Elena has potential. Clara's, she's responsible, she'll manage. She doesn't need the same push." "She doesn't deserve it, but Elena does," Mom agreed. Those words carved themselves into me like a brand. She deserved it, but you didn't. That night, I cried into my pillow until the fabric was damp. Then I got up, looked in the mirror, and whispered to my reflection, "I'll manage." College wasn't what I imagined. It was harder, lonelier, but it became my battlefield. I worked part-time at a diner, scrubbing dishes until my fingers blistered. I took on shifts as a library assistant, then as a tutor. Every dollar went to tuition, every hour stolen from sleep. Elena, meanwhile, posted pictures, online parties, beaches, smiles. She called home weekly, and every call ended with, "Dad transferred money again." Or Mom just sent me another allowance. We went to the same university, but lived in different worlds. She lived in a bright apartment paid for by our parents. I lived in a tiny room above a laundromat, where the walls smelled faintly of detergent and loneliness. Still, I didn't hate her, not yet. I told myself she didn't choose to be the favorite. Maybe she didn't even notice the difference. But when she visited my dorm once, just once, and wrinkled her nose, I knew she did. "You really live here?" she asked, glancing around the small, cluttered space. "It's cozy." I heard the condescension in her tone, the way she looked at me like I was a stranger. "Yes," I said simply, closing my laptop. "I pay for it myself." She laughed lightly. "Well, Mom and Dad would help if you just asked." I wanted to tell her I had asked once, and was told that I needed to learn independence. But I only smiled and said, "It's fine. I'm learning more this way." She shrugged. "If you say so. Anyway, I've got to go. We're going out tonight, big frat party." That night, I sat at my desk, staring at the same textbook for hours. Not reading, just thinking. I imagined Elena at her party, dancing, laughing, bathed in light, while I sat surrounded by silence and unpaid bills. A strange fire kindled inside me, not quite hatred, not yet, but something sharper than envy, a promise. By senior year, the contrast had become a cruel joke. I was known by professors, respected by classmates, and still invisible to the people who should have been proud of me. Elena, though barely passing her classes, remained the family jewel. When I called home once to tell them I'd been chosen for a research internship, Mom said. "That's nice, dear. By the way, did you hear? Elena got invited to model for a local brand." I congratulated her. My voice didn't crack, but my heart did. Every time I looked at my reflection, I saw the tiredness under my eyes, the calluses on my hands, the quiet strength no one cared to see. But beneath the exhaustion, something else was growing resolve. One rainy afternoon, as graduation neared, I found myself in the campus library, my refuge. My project advisor, Professor Reeves, sat beside me, reviewing my research paper. "This is extraordinary, Clara," he said, tapping the page. "You've done something remarkable here. I'm recommending it for publication." I blinked, stunned. "Really?" He smiled. "You've earned it. I've also nominated you for the Outstanding Research Contribution Award. I think you might win." My heart hammered in my chest. For once, the word deserve didn't sting. That night, I walked home in the rain, soaked to the bone, but smiling. I imagined my parents' faces, not for revenge, not yet. Just for recognition. For once, I wanted them to look at me and see me. Graduation was 2 weeks away. Elena texted in our family group chat. "Can't wait for you guys to see me in my gown. I'm going to look stunning, smiling face with heart eyes." Mom replied instantly with heart emojis. Dad sent a picture of the bouquet he'd ordered. No one replied to my quiet message. I'm excited too. That was when I stopped hoping. But something inside me whispered, a quiet, determined voice. They may not see me now, but they will. And so, as I sat in my little room surrounded by packed boxes, I promised myself that graduation wouldn't just be the end of a chapter. It would be the beginning of my reckoning. They thought I didn't deserve their help. They were about to find out what I truly deserved. Graduation morning smelled like rain and new beginnings. I woke up before dawn, sitting in the half-dark of my small apartment, the sound of water dripping from the old pipe above my sink. My gown hung on the back of the chair, wrinkled but clean. A small miracle considering I'd ironed it with a hair straightener the night before. For a moment, I sat there staring at it, remembering everything it took to reach this day, the double shifts, the nights I studied through tears, the mornings I showed up to class with aching hands. This gown wasn't just fabric, it was armor. I put it on slowly, smoothing the folds, tying the sash, and whispering to myself, "You made it, Clara." You did this. Outside, the world was gray and soft. The air smelled like the promise of change. When I arrived at the university grounds, the campus buzzed with laughter, camera flashes, and the echo of proud families calling their children's names. Balloons floated. Flowers changed hands. I stood among the crowd, anonymous but content, until I saw them, my parents and Elena. They looked picture perfect. My father in his favorite navy suit, my mother wearing pearls, Elena glowing in her pristine white dress under her gown. She waved when she saw me, and they all walked toward me. "Clara," Mom said, smiling politely as if greeting an acquaintance. "You look nice." "Thanks," I said, trying to sound casual. Dad handed the huge bouquet of white roses to Elena. "For my star graduate." I watched the petals brush her cheek as she smiled brightly, posing for pictures. "They didn't bring flowers for me, not even a card. Let's take one together," Elena chirped, grabbing my hand. A stranger might have thought we were close, two sisters smiling side by side. But as the camera clicked, I felt the familiar weight of invisibility. It was strange how quickly old wounds reopened. I reminded myself that today wasn't about them. It was about me, about what I had built, alone. The ceremony began under a sky that threatened rain but held its tears. Hundreds of us filled the stadium, gowns rippling in the soft wind. The orchestra played. The dean spoke about perseverance and ambition, words that meant more to me than anyone would ever know. Names were called one after another. Applause rose and fell like waves. When Elena's name echoed through the speakers, my parents stood clapping wildly, cheering like she'd won the Nobel Prize. I clapped too softly, genuinely, because despite everything, she was still my sister. Then the moment came. My heart raced as I heard my name, Clara Bennett, Bachelor of Science, summa cum laude, for a heartbeat silence. Then applause, loud, sustained, genuine. I walked the stage, trying to keep my steps steady, but inside I was trembling. Not from nerves, but from disbelief. The dean shook my hand, leaned closer, and whispered, "Stay up here, Miss Bennet." I froze. "Sir," he smiled, "you'll see." He turned to the microphone. "And now, before we continue, it is my great honor to present the Outstanding Research Contribution Award to one of our most dedicated graduates, Miss Clara Bennet." The crowd erupted. Cameras flashed. The screen behind him lit up with the title of my research paper, Nanopolymer Solutions for Environmental Waste Treatment, and my name beneath it. Then came the real shock. The dean continued, "Miss Bennet's work has not only been published in the International Science Review, but she has also been offered a fully funded research position at Cambridge University, sponsored by the Global Environmental Research Institute." Gasps spread through the audience. Applause thundered. I turned toward the crowd and saw my parents' faces. They weren't clapping, they weren't smiling. Their faces had gone completely pale. In that moment, I understood something profound. They hadn't believed I could ever outshine Elena. They'd built their world around her being the bright one, their pride, their investment, their proof of success. But here I was, standing on a stage without their help, being recognized by the world they thought I'd never belong to. For a heartbeat, I almost felt sorry for them, almost. The dean placed a medal around my neck. "Congratulations, Miss Bennet, you've earned it." And for the first time in my life, I actually believed those words. After the ceremony, chaos filled the courtyard, laughter, hugs, tears. Families clustered together for photos. My classmates came to congratulate me, and I smiled, genuinely happy. Then I saw them approaching my parents and Elena. "Clara," Dad said stiffly, his voice too careful. "That was unexpected." "Unexpected," I echoed. "I mean," Mom cut in quickly, "we're proud of you, dear, of course we are. You didn't tell us about the award." I looked at her. "Would you have listened if I had?" she faltered. "Of course, no, Mom," I said gently, not cruelly, but with a calmness I didn't know I possessed. "You wouldn't have, you never did." Elena crossed her arms, her perfect smile cracking slightly. "Well, good for you. I mean, it's not like awards mean everything." "Maybe not," I said, smiling faintly, "but effort does." Dad cleared his throat, uncomfortable. "Cambridge, huh, that's impressive. Maybe you could. Well, maybe we could help with the travel expenses." For years I had dreamed of hearing those words, an offer of help, a sign of care. But now they sounded hollow. "No," I said softly. "I've already arranged everything, my sponsors covering the costs." Their faces tightened, an awkward silence stretching between us. "Well," Mom said finally, forcing a smile, "we're glad you've found your path." I nodded. I did, even if you weren't part of it. We stood there for a while, 4 people bound by blood, separated by years of quiet wounds. I looked at them, feeling strangely light. I wasn't angry anymore, just free. Then Elena spoke, her voice small, uncertain. "So are you leaving soon?" "In a month," I said. "Cambridge wants me to start this summer." She nodded, looking away. For the first time, I saw something I'd never seen on her face: fear. The kind that comes when the ground you've stood on your whole life begins to crumble. Later that evening, when the crowd had thinned and the sun dipped behind the campus tower, I stood alone at the edge of the field. The breeze tugged at my gown, and my medal glinted softly in the fading light. I could still see my family in the distance, packing up, Elena's laughter forced and brittle. They didn't look back. I didn't need them to, because I finally understood what I'd been chasing all those years. Not their approval, not their love, but my own worth. And that, I realized, was the sweetest victory of all. The applause faded, but its echo stayed with me long after the crowd had gone home. For days after graduation, my phone lit up with messages, classmates congratulating me, professors wishing me luck, a few companies offering to collaborate on research. My email overflowed with opportunity, but from my family, silence, no call, no text, not even a "we're proud of you." I told myself it didn't matter. I had learned to live without their approval long ago. Yet at night, when the world went quiet, I'd find myself staring at the ceiling, wondering why indifference from the people who raised me still hurt so much. A week later, my phone finally rang. Mom's name glowed on the screen. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hello, Clara, dear." Her voice was overly bright, like sunlight forced through a cracked window. "We were just talking about you. We're so proud of everything you've accomplished." "Cambridge, my goodness, that's amazing." I leaned back in my chair, the ocean breeze from my open window rustling the papers on my desk. "Thank you," I said evenly. "Your father and I were thinking," she continued, "maybe we could take you out for dinner before you leave. A little celebration, just family. Family." The word felt strange on her tongue, like a lie dressed in silk. "Sure," I said quietly. "Just let me know when." We met at a restaurant near the old town square. One of those fancy places with dim lights and too many forks. They had already ordered when I arrived. Clara, Dad stood, pulling out my chair as though we'd always been close. "You look great. Success suits you." I smiled politely, "Thank you." Elena was there too, scrolling on her phone. Her smile when she looked up was practiced. "Hey, Dr. Genius, how's Cambridge life going to treat you?" "I wouldn't know yet," I said, sitting down. "But I'm excited to find out." She shrugged, setting her phone aside. "Well, good for you. Not everyone gets that lucky." Lucky? That word again, as if years of sleepless nights, exhaustion, and self-sacrifice were luck. I smiled. Maybe luck favors those who don't rely on others to pay their way. Her expression flickered, a tiny crack in the perfect mask. "What's that supposed to mean?" Mom interjected quickly. "Girls, please, let's not spoil the evening." I looked at her, calm. "I'm not spoiling anything, Mom, just being honest." The rest of dinner was quiet. My parents tried to fill the silence with small talk. The weather, my upcoming flight, neighborhood gossip. But beneath their polite smiles, I saw something unfamiliar, unease. They didn't know how to talk to me anymore. Maybe because, for the first time, they couldn't control the narrative. After dinner, outside under the soft glow of streetlights, Mom hugged me. Her perfume was the same one she'd worn all my life, a sweet, heavy scent that once meant home. "Take care of yourself, Clara," she said softly. "And remember, no matter what, we love you." I didn't pull away, but I didn't say it back either, not because I hated her, I didn't. But love to me had always come with terms and conditions, and I was finally done signing contracts I never agreed to. Cambridge felt like another planet. The air was cold, crisp, and smelled faintly of rain and books. I rented a small flat near the river, close enough to hear the bells from King's College every morning. For the first time in my life, I woke up feeling free. No obligations, no guilt, just purpose. Days were spent in the lab, surrounded by brilliant minds who valued effort over charm. My colleagues didn't care about my background, only my work. It was liberating in a way I hadn't known was possible. Sometimes I'd pause in the middle of a research discussion, look around at the buzzing energy, and think, I did this. On my own, months passed and life began to bloom. My research was moving forward, my papers gaining attention, and invitations began arriving, conferences, panels, collaborations. I was thriving. And then, out of nowhere, came the first message. "Mom, hi, sweetheart. Hope you're doing well. Things have been a bit tight lately. Do you think you could help out with your sister's rent? She's had some trouble finding a job." I stared at the message for a long time. So this was why they remembered me. I didn't reply. 2 days later, another message. "Dad, we wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. You know how family helps each other. Family helps each other." I laughed out loud, a hollow, humorless sound that echoed through my empty apartment. Where had that philosophy been when I was drowning in tuition bills? When I worked double shifts just to keep up, still, part of me ached. Because despite everything, I wanted to believe they'd changed. That maybe they'd learned something, so I sent a short reply, "I'm sorry, I can't." It was the first time I'd ever told them no. Weeks passed and the messages slowed, then stopped. I found out later, through mutual friends and whispered updates, that Elena had lost her job offer after failing a background check. Her boyfriend had left her bills piled up, and my parents, once so proud, had started selling things to cover her expenses. I should have felt pity, maybe a part of me did, but mostly I felt detached. This was the silence after the applause, not vengeful, not loud, just inevitable. They had built their world around her, and now that it was crumbling, they didn't know how to live outside it. Sometimes, late at night, I'd scroll through old photos on my phone, the ones from graduation day. There was one where I stood on stage, metal glinting, smile small but real. In the background, barely visible, my parents sat in the audience, their faces pale and unreadable. I'd stare at that picture and whisper to myself, "You did it, Clara. You became everything they said you couldn't be." But the truth, my victory wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about proving myself right. By the end of the year, I received an invitation to speak at an international conference, hosted at my old university, the same place where I'd once stood invisible, the same stage where their faces had turned pale. And when I saw my name listed as keynote speaker, I felt something stir deep inside, not anger, not pride, but the calm anticipation of closure. It wasn't revenge I wanted. It was the final word in a story they thought they had already written for me. When the invitation arrived, I almost didn't believe it was real. The university that had once been my battleground, the place where I'd struggled to prove I belonged, was inviting me back. Not as a student, not as a forgotten sister, but as Dr. Clara Bennett, lead research fellow, Cambridge Environmental Institute, keynote speaker for the Global Innovations Symposium. I read the email 3 times before I finally let myself smile. The irony wasn't lost on me. Life had a strange sense of humor. Months passed in preparation. My team and I finalized our project's next phase, and the day of the conference drew closer. As the plane descended over my home city, I stared out the window, watching the familiar skyline come into view. It was like looking at a ghost from another life. I hadn't seen my family in almost 2 years. We hadn't spoken since I refused to fund Elena's debts. A part of me had expected them to cut me off completely. But a week before the event, a message came. "Mom, we saw the announcement. You're speaking at the university. We'll be there to support you. So proud of you, sweetheart." There it was again, proud. That word had become so flexible in their mouths. I didn't reply, but I didn't stop them from coming either. Some things I decided were better witnessed. The day of the symposium dawned bright and cold, sunlight spilling over the university's old stone walls. The auditorium was filled with academics, journalists, and former classmates. Cameras flashed, the air buzzed with excitement. When the event coordinator handed me my name badge, I caught sight of the reflection in the polished marble floor, my reflection, and for a moment, I saw the girl I used to be. The one who worked nights and studied by the flicker of a desk lamp. She smiled back at me. The event began with brief introductions, a few speeches from university staff. I sat quietly, waiting for my turn, my notes clutched in my lap. When they finally called my name, the applause was thunderous. I walked to the podium, my heels clicking against the wooden stage, and there, in the 3rd row, I saw them, my parents, sitting side by side. Elena beside them, her hair shorter, her expression distant. They looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, but in presence like the world had dimmed around them. "Good morning." I began, my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. It feels strange standing here again. I walked these halls as a student once, a very different person from who I am today. A ripple of soft laughter moved through the audience. I used to believe success meant pleasing others, proving to them that I was worth loving, worth supporting. But life has a way of teaching you that worth isn't something others give you. It's something you build when no one believes you can. I let the words hang in the air. My gaze drifted, almost unconsciously, toward my family. Mom's hands were clasped tightly together. Dad stared at the floor. Elena looked away. I wasn't the student who had everything handed to her. I continued. I was the one who worked 3 jobs, who studied between shifts, who doubted herself every night and still showed up the next morning. And to every student who feels invisible, I want to say this. You don't need anyone's permission to shine. A hush fell over the room. I could see heads nodding. Some people even wiped tears from their eyes. I smiled softly, because sometimes being underestimated is the greatest gift life can give you. It teaches you to build your own wings, and once you learn to fly, no one can take that from you. The applause rose like thunder, not polite but passionate. It filled the entire hall, rolling like a wave that washed away every doubt I'd ever carried. For a moment, I let it sink in, the sound, the warmth, the pure validation. Then my eyes met my parents' again. Mom's eyes were glossy with unshed tears. Dad's jaw was tight, as if swallowing something heavy. Elena looked frozen, her smile brittle, her pride wounded. And I realized this was my revenge, not in their shame, not in their regret, but in the simple, undeniable truth that I no longer needed them to recognize me. I had already recognized myself. After the ceremony, people swarmed around me, reporters, students, old professors. They shook my hand, asked questions, congratulated me. Through it all, I kept my composure, answering graciously, smiling genuinely. Eventually, as the crowd thinned, I saw them approach. Clara, Dad said, his voice quiet. That was incredible. Mom nodded, eyes red. We're so proud of you, darling. Truly, we didn't know. I stopped her gently. It's okay, Mom. You don't have to explain. She blinked. But I mean it, I said softly. You taught me something valuable. You taught me how to stand on my own. I used to resent you for it, but now I'm grateful. Dad frowned slightly, confused. Grateful? I smiled, not bitterly, not cruelly, but with the quiet peace of someone who's already won. Yes, because if you hadn't believed I didn't deserve your help, I might never have learned how to create my own path. They stood there in silence, unsure how to respond. Behind them, Elena shifted awkwardly. I'm happy for you, she said finally, though her tone trembled. Really, I am, I know, I said, and I hope you find your own way too, Elena. You're capable of more than they ever let you believe. Her eyes widened slightly, surprise, maybe even shame. For the first time, she didn't have a comeback. Outside, the sky was beginning to darken, the first hints of evening painting the clouds pink and gold. I walked across the courtyard, my heels echoing on the familiar stone. The wind carried the faint sound of applause from the hall behind me. I didn't look back because I didn't need to. That night, in my hotel room overlooking the city lights, I opened my old notebook, the one I used to write goals and quotes in during college. On the last page, I had scribbled a promise to myself years ago. One day they'll see me. I smiled and wrote beneath it. They did, and I saw myself first. Sometimes revenge isn't about hurting the ones who hurt you. It's about becoming so whole, so fulfilled, so untouchable, that their cruelty no longer defines you. And that was my sweetest revenge of all, not their regret, but my peace.